Welcome to Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt of the Marquardt Law Firm at marquardtlawfirm.com.
Welcome back to Talk Law Radio. I'm Todd Marquardt. On the radio in San Antonio, Houston, South Texas, surrounding areas, we talk about the law on the radio to help you discover your legal issue blind spots. And one of the blind spots today is being debanked. That's when the bank closes your account for no apparent reason. And if that's happened to you, call the show. We only have a few minutes left. 210-308-8867. 210-308-8867. I was going to tell you before the break who to contact if you've been debanked. And you can go to online helpwithmybank.gov. That's helpwithmybank.gov if you have a complaint about being debanked. I didn't know about this until I heard that President Trump had sued JP Morgan Chase and Jamie Dimon for debanking him. So there are resources out there for you. Now, this is the fourth segment, and that's when we talk about legacy.
And now, it's time for the Talk Law Radio Legacy Spotlight. What's your legacy? Sponsored by Marquardt Law Firm.
So this is the legacy segment, Steve, and attorneys at Marquardt Law Firm focus on business and estate law, including last wills, living trusts, and tax-protected inheritance plans. It's all about legacy. And today I want to talk about the revocable living trust. Now, you might be wondering, when is this a good solution for somebody? So I have 5 questions. Do you own real estate in more than one state? State law controls what happens with your real estate after you die. And if you have a will, well, then you have to take that will to each state and go through a probate process to transfer title to that real estate. Well, if you have a revocable living trust and you deed those properties to your trust while you're alive, then you don't have to do that. And so most people don't want to go through probate one time, let alone 2 times. So in the first segment or the second segment, we were talking about a hypothetical wanting to buy a house in South Carolina. Well, if that's your vacation home, well, you don't want to have to go to probate your estate in Texas where your primary residence is, and then again where your vacation residence is. Another one is another question that you can ask yourself to decide if you want to have a living trust is, do you want the inheritance that you leave to your spouse, to your kids, or to your other beneficiaries to be protected from business setbacks, economic downturns, divorce, or frivolous lawsuits? And if the answer is yes, then that's a good strategy to use, to create a testamentary trust for those people so that their inheritance can be protected. And I'll give you an example. Weston Graham and Elizabeth Graham were married and lived here in Texas. And this is a very high-profile case, and so you can fact-check all these things by searching the internet. And I'm only going to talk about the facts, but there was a divorce filed, and part of the divorce is dividing up the assets. That's the court's job. And what you may not know about Weston Graham, unless you know him or read the news a lot, is that he was one of the co-founders of Rackspace.
Wow.
Which is a successful technology business here in San Antonio. Well, during the divorce, you have to testify, you have to offer up documents to show what your assets are, and you have to prove that it's either community property or separate property.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the law presumes that every dollar you earn and everything that you acquire after you get married is going to be community property, one half owned by each spouse. That's the presumption. If you want to rebut that presumption, you have to offer up evidence that says, no, this is my separate property. And so this is what Weston Graham did. He said the money that he used to invest in Rackspace came from a testamentary trust that he inherited. Well, inherited property is separate property.
Yes.
And it was held in a trust, and so you could clearly go back in time and trace where that money came from. And that's what he showed, is that I inherited this money in trust. I used that trust money to invest in Rackspace, and therefore Rackspace is my separate property.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, and we were talking about logic earlier, so that's logical.
Right. Yeah.
Because it was separate property.
Yeah, and so the news was very public about how upset Elizabeth Weston was about that, because she felt like she had helped him build that company to be worth billions of dollars. But he said, no, that was my separate property, and so you can't have it. And so that's an example of the power of a testamentary trust. But here's where it gets a little more complicated, is that the words matter in the trust.
Mm-hmm.
You just can't go to Walmart or go on the internet and pull something off that says testamentary trust, because the laws of all 50 states are a little bit different,
Mm-hmm.
and you want to make sure that it has the right words. And so I really dialed in on this case because I want to help my clients achieve the same result.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want my daughter's divorcing husband to be able to take the money that I left her away from her.
Sure.
I want to keep it in the family.
Mm-hmm.
I'll put that on my financial roadmap. So part of what you have to be careful with is whether or not the testamentary trust gives the beneficiary a present possessory right to the income or the principal. And so that's a fine fact, a fine-tuned part of the trust that you have to make sure is correct in order to be able to protect the child or the beneficiary from their divorcing spouse.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've got it all figured out now, and I think that I've already been doing this, but I just am crystal clear now on how he did it.
Mm-hmm.
So I might have to see if I can get those documents from his case. That's the other thing about court cases, is that they're public.
Are they? Okay.
Yeah. So if anybody's curious, they can just search the court records for that divorce, and same thing happens in probate, and some fraud comes after that. So there's criminals out there that are searching public records,
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure out how they can steal from certain people. And even here in Bexar County, there's a history of fraud after death, going after a deceased person's assets. And so it's easy to avoid all that by avoiding the probate court. And you can do that with the revocable living trust, because the trust doesn't have to get filed. It doesn't have to be reviewed or analyzed by the judge. And so after you pass away, everybody can wrap up your affairs at the conference table instead of at the courthouse.
You know, that's an interesting point, that there's actually criminals out there that are looking, to indeed access these public records. And so the living trust is going to keep everything private.
Right. Privacy
Mm-hmm.
is important to some people.
Yeah, probably to a lot of folks.
Right. And so I think it also makes things easier for those that survive us because most people try and avoid the legal system. You know, we're good boys and girls. We don't want to get in trouble with the law, and so we don't want to meet with an attorney. We don't want to see a judge. We don't want to get involved with the police. And so people just, you know, they're kind of scared about that. They want to avoid the legal system at all costs.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good rule of thumb, but it's a little bit too general and too broad because really, if you want to avoid the hassle and expense of the probate court, you do need to see an attorney.
And you do need to plan.
That's
you need
right.
to have an estate plan.
Yeah, I think that's why we get along, because we plan. And somebody was asking me, an accountant was asking me the other day, what's your ideal client? Not what kind of work do you want to do with them, but what's the ideal client personality? And I thought about it for a minute and I said, I like to work with people who plan.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody who knows what they're going to be doing next week, next month, next year, 5 years. You know, the longer they plan, the better. Now, I also do help those who are in crisis because I like to help them get out of their crisis.
Sure.
But ideally, I like to work with somebody who plans. Well, we do have to end the show. I hope that you've learned something about debanking, about having a lifetime comprehensive written financial plan, and about living revocable trusts and inherited trusts. But Steve, I'll give you the last 30 seconds. What else do you want them to remember?
Oh, I would like for people to remember that if they're open to having a financial roadmap completed, that they can do so. And, don't make the big mistake of not having a plan. So just give me a call, Steve Warren, at 210-685-2722, and make it a great day, everybody.
Make it a great day. And if they want to chat about their favorite character on Star Trek, you're probably open to that too.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big fan of that show. Was a big fan. Still am. If I can catch them.
Well, stay warm, San Antonio, South Texas, and Houston. We have to go. We'll see you next time.
This has been Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt, brought to you by the Marquardt Law Firm. You can learn more at marquardtlawfirm.com. And be sure to listen to the full Talk Law Radio show Saturday mornings at 11 on 9:30 a.m. The Answer.
Most families don't realize they have hidden legal blind spots until it's too late. Wills, trusts, Medicaid planning, even protecting a business. These are the kinds of issues attorney Todd Marquardt helps uncover before they become problems. Todd is the host of Talk Law Radio, where each week he guides listeners through the legal challenges families, veterans, and business owners face, while showing them the practical steps to protect what matters most. Catch Talk Law Radio, Saturdays at 11 a.m. on 9:30 a.m. The Answer, 6:30 a.m. The Word, and now in Houston on AM 1070 and 103.3 FM The Answer, or anytime on YouTube. Planning isn't just about documents. It's about peace of mind, security for loved ones, and building a legacy that lasts. Don't wait for a crisis. Do it before you die.